The engagement party was everything I dreamed of. Twinkling lights strung across my parents' backyard, champagne flowing freely, and our closest friends celebrating what should have been the happiest moment of my life. I stood beside Daniel, my hand resting comfortably in his, admiring the way the diamond on my finger caught the light. Everything was perfect. Until it wasn't. Speech. Speech, someone called out, and Daniel's best friend Ryan jumped up, slightly tipsy, microphone in hand. The crowd quieted down, expectant smiles all around. To Daniel and his beautiful bride-to-be, Ryan began, raising his glass. We all know Daniel's been planning this for months. But what you don't know is that he's got a backup plan. He paused for comedic effect, and nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. Just in case this one messes up, he's got a backup fiancé waiting in the wings. The laughter grew louder, though mine felt forced. I glanced at Daniel, expecting him to roll his eyes at his friend's tasteless humor, but his face had gone pale. He wasn't laughing at all. In fact, he looked almost guilty. Ryan wasn't done. I mean, we all need a plan B, right? Especially with women. More laughter, though I noticed several people shifting uncomfortably. My mother's smile had frozen on her face. That's when I noticed the glances. Ryan's eyes kept darting to a woman standing near the bar, a tall, elegant brunette I vaguely recognized as someone from Daniel's office. Jessica, I thought her name was. And she wasn't laughing either. Instead, she was staring into her drink, a slight smile playing at her lips. Two more of Daniel's friends joined in with similar jokes throughout the evening. Better keep him happy, or Jessica here might have to step in, one said. Yeah, Daniel's got options, another added. Each time, they looked at her. Each time, she'd smile that same secretive smile. And each time, Daniel would grip his drink a little tighter, his jaw clenching imperceptibly. I laughed along, played the good sport, but something cold had settled in my stomach. The jokes were too specific, too pointed. And why did everyone keep looking at her? After the party, as we were cleaning up, I tried to bring it up casually. That was weird, right? All those backup fiancé jokes. Daniel busied himself gathering champagne flutes. You know how Ryan gets when he drinks. He doesn't think before he talks. But it wasn't just Ryan. And they all kept looking at that woman from your office. Jessica. His hand stilled for just a moment, barely a second, but I caught it. I didn't notice. You're reading too much into drunk guys being idiots. But I wasn't reading too much into it. I was reading just enough. That night, Daniel fell asleep quickly, exhausted from the party. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, unable to shake the feeling that something was very wrong. Around 2 a.m., I gave up on sleep. His phone was charging on the nightstand, face up. I'd never been the type to snoop, I'd always trusted him completely. But those jokes, those glances, that guilty look on his face. My hand moved almost of its own accord. I knew his passcode, he'd never hidden it from me. The phone unlocked with a soft click, and I navigated to his messages, heart pounding so hard I was sure it would wake him. I didn't have to scroll far. The thread with Jessica was recent, active, and damning. Can't wait to see you tonight, she'd written 3 days ago, the day before our engagement party. You know I can't stay away from you, he'd responded, with a heart emoji. Your fiancée doesn't suspect anything, does she? No. She trusts me completely. Sometimes I feel guilty about that. Don't feel guilty. Feel excited. We have something special. I scrolled further back, my hands shaking. Months of messages. Sweet, flirty, intimate messages. Inside jokes. Plans to meet up. Photos I couldn't bear to look at too closely. And throughout it all, mentions of me, the clueless fiancé, the obstacle, the woman who didn't need to know. The most recent message was from earlier that evening, sent while I'd been thanking guests for coming. You looked beautiful tonight. Couldn't stop thinking about you in that dress. I set the phone down carefully, my whole body numb. The room felt too small, the air too thick. Beside me, Daniel slept peacefully, the man I'd agreed to marry, the man I'd trusted with my whole heart. The backup fiancé joke suddenly made perfect sense. It wasn't a joke at all. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I lay perfectly still beside Daniel, watching the ceiling fan rotate slowly in the darkness, my mind racing through every interaction, every late night at the office, every time he'd been distracted or distant. How many signs had I missed? When dawn finally broke, I slipped out of bed quietly. Daniel stirred but didn't wake. In the bathroom, I stared at my reflection, red-rimmed eyes, pale skin, the engagement ring that suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I wanted to rip it off and throw it at him. I wanted to scream. But instead, I took a deep breath and started planning. If I confronted him now, he'd just deny it, make excuses, gaslight me into thinking I was overreacting. I'd seen enough stories from friends to know how this played out. No, I needed more evidence. And I needed a plan. Over breakfast, Daniel was cheerful, seemingly oblivious. Great party last night, wasn't it? Your mom outdid herself with the decorations. I smiled, spooning yogurt into my mouth mechanically. It was perfect. Though those jokes from Ryan were a bit much. He waved a hand dismissively. You know how he is. Guys give each other crap. It doesn't mean anything. Right, I said, watching him carefully. It doesn't mean anything. After he left for work, I did something I'd never done before. I called in sick to my own job and spent the day becoming a detective in my own relationship. I started with his laptop, which he'd left at home. The password took me 3 tries, but I got in, our anniversary date, ironically. His email was a treasure trove of betrayal. There were hotel reservations I knew nothing about, charged to a credit card I didn't have access to, receipts for expensive dinners at restaurants we'd never been to together, and more messages with Jessica, using his personal email instead of his phone. Can you get away this weekend? She'd written last month. Tell her it's a work trip. We could finally have a whole night together. I'll figure something out, he'd replied. She's been talking about wedding planning. She won't notice if I'm gone for a day or 2. I remembered that weekend. He'd told me his firm was sending him to a conference in Seattle. I'd been so supportive, even driving him to the airport. While I'd spent the weekend sampling wedding cakes and choosing flower arrangements, he'd been with her. The anger that had been building inside me finally crested. I wanted to break something. Instead, I kept digging. I found photos on his cloud storage, pictures of them together, laughing, embracing, kissing. In some of them, she was wearing jewelry I recognized. A necklace Daniel had claimed he'd bought for his mother. Earrings, he said, were for his sister's birthday. All lies. All gifts for her. By the time Daniel came home that evening, I had compiled an entire folder of evidence on my own laptop. Screenshots, forwarded emails, everything. But I still wasn't ready to confront him. I needed something more. I needed to see how far he would go, how easily he would lie to my face when given a direct opportunity to come clean. Hey, sweetheart, he said, kissing my cheek as he walked in. The casual affection made my skin crawl, but I forced myself to smile. How was work? Busy. Jessica and I had to stay late working on the Morrison account. He said her name so easily, so naturally, as if it meant nothing. Jessica, I repeated slowly. She seemed nice at the party. Something flickered in his eyes. Yeah, she's a good colleague. Some of your friends seem to think she was more than that. I kept my tone light, curious, not accusatory. He laughed, but it sounded forced. They were just drunk and stupid. You're not actually worried about that, are you? This was it. The moment he could tell the truth, come clean, save our relationship. I waited, giving him the chance. Because you know you're the only woman I love, he continued, pulling me into a hug. Those guys are idiots. Jessica's just a co-worker. Nothing more. I hugged him back, my arms wooden, and made my decision. He'd failed the test. He'd looked me in the eye and lied. Over the next week, I played the perfect fiancé while gathering more evidence. I checked our phone records and found hundreds of calls between them, often lasting hours, during times he told me he was in meetings or working late. I drove by his office one evening when he said he was working late and saw his car parked at a restaurant downtown. Through the window, I could see him and Jessica sharing a bottle of wine, his hand covering hers on the table. But I also did something else. I called a lawyer, a friend of a friend who specialized in family law. Even though we weren't married yet, I wanted to understand my options, especially since we'd already combined some finances for wedding expenses and the down payment on a house we were supposed to buy together. Document everything, she advised. And if you really want to know the truth, sometimes you have to force their hand. That's when I devised my test. A way to see not just whether Daniel would cheat, I already knew that answer, but how he'd react when forced to choose between his backup fiancé and me. I started planning, and this time, I was going to be ready for whatever came next. The plan came to me during a sleepless night, scrolling through those messages again, each one a fresh knife to the heart. If Daniel had a backup fiancé, then I needed to make him think he might actually need her. I needed to create a situation where he'd have to show his true colors, not through confrontation, but through choice. I started by becoming the difficult fiancé his messages had always hinted I might become. "I've been thinking," I said over dinner one evening, pushing my food around my plate. "Maybe we should postpone the wedding." Daniel's fork froze halfway to his mouth. "What? Why?" "I don't know. I feel like we're rushing. Maybe we should wait another year, really make sure we're ready." I watched his face carefully. Relief flooded his features before he quickly masked it with concern. "If that's what you want, honey, I just want you to be happy." Too easy. He'd agreed too quickly. A man truly in love would have asked more questions, seemed more disappointed. Over the next few days, I ramped it up. I picked small fights about nothing, the way he loaded the dishwasher, his tone when he spoke to me, plans he made without consulting me first. Each time, I watched him grow more frustrated, more distant. And each time, I checked his phone and found fresh messages to Jessica. "She's being crazy lately," he'd written. "Wanting to postpone the wedding, picking fights about everything." "Maybe it's a sign," Jessica had responded. "Maybe she knows deep down that you two aren't right for each other." "Maybe you're right." Those 3 words told me everything I needed to know. He was already mentally checking out, already building a narrative where I was the problem, where leaving me for Jessica would be justified. But I wasn't done yet. Phase 2 of my plan began when I accidentally left my laptop open to a job posting in Boston, 3,000 miles away. Daniel noticed it that evening. "Boston?" he asked, pointing at the screen. I shrugged. "Just looking. There's an amazing opportunity there. Better position, more money." "But what about us? What about the wedding?" "You said you wanted me to be happy," I reminded him. "This job would make me happy. We could do long distance for a while, see how it goes." I could practically see the calculations running behind his eyes. Long distance would be perfect for him. He could be with Jessica while keeping me as his backup plan. "If it's really what you want," he said slowly, "I support you." That night, his messages to Jessica were ecstatic. "She might be moving to Boston. Can you believe it? This could work out perfectly. Does this mean we can finally be together?" Jessica had written back, "Let's not get ahead of ourselves. But yeah, maybe soon." I felt sick reading it, but I pushed forward. The final phase of my plan required precision timing and a bit of theatrical flair. I called Ryan, Daniel's best friend who'd made those backup fiancé jokes. We met at a coffee shop the next morning. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me," I said, sliding into the seat across from him. "Daniel and Jessica. How long has it been going on?" Ryan's face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about." "Ryan. I know. I've known for a while. I just need details." He slumped in his chair, guilt written all over his face. "About 8 months. Look, I told him it was wrong. I told him he needed to break up with you before things got serious with her. But he said he loved you both, couldn't choose." "Couldn't choose," I repeated bitterly. "And you all thought this was funny? The backup fiancé jokes. That was messed up," I know. We were trying to get him to see how ridiculous the situation was. We thought if we made it into a joke at the engagement party, he'd realize he had to make a choice. Some of the guys thought he'd pick you, others thought Jessica. It was stupid. We were stupid. Yes, you were. I leaned forward. But now you're going to help me fix this. Ryan listened as I outlined my plan, his eyes growing wider with each detail. That's kind of brilliant, he said when I finished. And brutal. But he deserves it. Will you help? He nodded slowly. Yeah, I'll help. It's the least I can do. The trap was set for Friday night. Daniel thought we were going to a dinner party at Ryan's house, just a small gathering of friends. What he didn't know was that I'd invited Jessica too, telling her through a fake email from Daniel's work that there was a surprise celebration for a major account they'd landed. I also didn't tell Daniel that I'd invited my parents, my sister, and several of our mutual friends who knew nothing about his affair. And I'd hired a photographer, ostensibly for Ryan's birthday, but really to document everything. On Friday morning, I played my final card. I left my laptop open again, this time to an acceptance email for the Boston job. It was fake, I'd created it using a template, but Daniel didn't know that. He found it while I was in the shower. When I came out, he was sitting on the bed, looking at the screen. You got the job. Oh. Yes. I was going to tell you tonight. They want me to start in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. His voice cracked slightly. I know it's fast. But Daniel, this is my dream job. You understand, right? He nodded numbly, and I could see his mind racing. After 8 months of having both of us, he was suddenly facing the reality of losing his primary relationship. The safety net was being yanked away. We'll make it work, he said finally, but his voice lacked conviction. That afternoon, while he was at work, I got everything ready. I put on my best dress, the one he'd always said was his favorite. I did my makeup carefully, curled my hair. I wanted to look perfect for what was coming. As we drove to Ryan's house that evening, Daniel was quiet, pensive. His phone kept buzzing with messages, probably from Jessica confirming she'd be there. You okay? I asked, putting my hand on his knee. He covered it with his own. Yeah. Just thinking about how much I'll miss you when you move. I smiled. Who says you'll miss me? Maybe you'll be relieved. Don't say that. But he wouldn't meet my eyes. When we pulled up to Ryan's house, I could see the lights on inside, shadows of people moving around. Daniel's hand tightened on the steering wheel. Ready? I asked. He had no idea just how loaded that question was. The moment we walked through Ryan's door, I could feel the tension crackling in the air like electricity before a storm. The house was more crowded than Daniel had expected. His face showed surprise when he saw my parents, my sister, and about 20 other people milling around with champagne glasses. What's all this? He whispered to me. Ryan said he wanted to celebrate our engagement properly. I lied smoothly. Since the official party got crashed by all those backup fiancé jokes. He went rigid beside me. Before he could respond, Jessica walked in from the kitchen, stunning in a red dress, her hair swept up elegantly. Our eyes met across the room, and I saw confusion flicker across her face as she registered the crowd, my presence, and Daniel's arm around my waist. Daniel! Ryan called out, raising a glass. There's the man of the hour. Come on, speech time. I felt Daniel try to pull away, but I linked my arm through his firmly. Yes, honey, I said loud enough for people nearby to hear. Let's hear what you have to say about our future together. We made our way to the center of the living room, where Ryan had set up a small microphone, my addition to the plan. Jessica had moved to the back of the room, looking like she wanted to disappear into the wall. I'm not really prepared, Daniel stammered, his eyes darting between me and Jessica. That's okay, I said, taking the microphone. I have some things I'd like to say first. I smiled at the crowd, channeling every ounce of composure I had left. Thank you all for coming tonight. When Daniel and I got engaged 3 months ago, I thought I knew exactly who I was marrying. I thought I knew the man standing beside me. Daniel's face had gone pale. He tried to take my hand, but I stepped away gracefully. I thought I was marrying someone honest. Someone loyal. Someone who meant it when he said forsaking all others. I let that hang in the air for a moment. Several people shifted uncomfortably. My mother's smile had frozen on her face. She didn't know what was coming, but she knew something was wrong. But then I found out something interesting at our engagement party. Did you all hear the jokes about Daniel having a backup fiancé? Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. I laughed too, because I thought it was a joke. Sweetheart, Daniel reached for the microphone, but I turned away from him. Jessica, I called out, looking directly at her. She'd gone white as a sheet. Could you come up here, please? What are you doing? Daniel hissed, but I ignored him. Jessica remained frozen by the wall, shaking her head slightly. No. Okay, I'll continue from here then. I pulled out my phone, where I'd loaded several screenshots. I'm going to read you all some text messages. These are from Daniel's phone to Jessica, sent over the past 8 months. Stop, Daniel said urgently, grabbing my arm. This is insane. Let's talk about this privately. I pulled away from him. Like you talked to me privately about your relationship with her? Oh wait, you didn't. You let me plan a wedding while you planned a future with someone else. My sister had moved to my side, her hand on my back in support. She'd been the one person I'd confided in about my plan. I started reading, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. Can't wait to see you tonight. You know I can't stay away from you. That was sent 3 days before our engagement party, Daniel. While I was at the jeweler picking up your wedding band. Gasps echoed around the room. My mother had tears in her eyes. My father looked like he wanted to hit something. Here's another good one. She trusts me completely. Sometimes I feel guilty about that. At least you had the decency to feel guilty. My voice cracked slightly on that last word, but I pushed through. Daniel had stopped trying to stop me. He just stood there, frozen, as his entire life collapsed around him. And my personal favorite, I continued, scrolling to the most recent message. This was sent yesterday. She's moving to Boston. This could work out perfectly. We can finally be together. You see, Daniel thought I was taking a job across the country. He was thrilled. Because it meant he could have his backup fiancé without the messy complications of actually breaking up with me. Jessica had started crying, mascara running down her face. She pushed through the crowd and ran out the front door. Daniel didn't move to follow her. I don't, he started, but Ryan cut him off. Don't bother, man, Ryan said, his voice hard. We all heard her. She's got the receipts. I looked around at the faces of our friends and family. Some looked angry, some looked sad, most looked shocked. This wasn't the evening any of them had expected. I staged the Boston job, I said, my voice quieter now. I wanted to see what you'd do if you thought I was leaving. If you'd fight for me, or if you'd see it as an opportunity to finally be with her. I laughed, but it came out bitter. You couldn't accept that offer fast enough. I was trying to be supportive, he said weakly. You were trying to have your cake and eat it too. I slipped the engagement ring off my finger. It felt like removing a shackle. You wanted a stable, respectable fiancé for your family and your career, and an exciting mistress for your ego. But you know what the funny thing is, Daniel? He didn't answer, just stared at the ring in my palm. The backup fiancé wasn't Jessica. It was me. I was your fallback option, your safe choice, the one you'd settle for if your real preference didn't work out. I pressed the ring into his hand. Well, I'm nobody's backup plan. The room erupted in chaos. My father moved toward Daniel, and it took both Ryan and another friend to hold him back. My mother wrapped me in her arms, sobbing. People were shouting, some at Daniel, some trying to calm everyone down. Through it all, Daniel just stood there, holding the ring, looking like a man who just watched his entire future disintegrate in real time. I should go, he finally said, his voice barely audible. Yes, I agreed. You should. He walked toward the door, every eye in the room tracking his movement. At the threshold, he turned back. "I did love you," he said. "That was real." "No," I said firmly. "You loved having me. There's a difference." He left, and I heard his car start up a moment later. Through the window, I saw Jessica standing by her car, and he walked right past her without a word. She stared after him in disbelief before getting in her own car and driving away. My sister brought me a glass of wine, and I drank it in one long gulp. "You okay?" she asked. "Not yet," I admitted. "But I will be." The next morning, I woke up in my sister's guest room, my head pounding from crying and wine. For a moment, I forgot where I was and why. Then it all came rushing back, the confrontation, the shocked faces, Daniel's pale expression as his world collapsed. The weight of the engagement ring that was no longer on my finger. My phone had 43 missed calls and over 100 text messages. Most were from friends expressing support. 3 were from Daniel, which I deleted without reading. 2 were from Jessica, which surprised me enough that I opened them. The first: "I know you have no reason to believe me, but I didn't know he was going to propose to you. When he told me, he said it was for his family, that his parents were pressuring him. He said he was going to break it off with you after the engagement party." The second: "He told me you two had an arrangement, that you knew about us and didn't care because you wanted the marriage for career reasons. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just thought you should know he lied to both of us." I stared at those messages for a long time. Part of me wanted to hate her, to blame her as much as Daniel. But she'd been manipulated too, fed a version of events that made her the hero of some romantic story instead of the other woman. He'd lied to everyone. I texted back, "Thank you for telling me. For what it's worth, I hope you find someone who doesn't make you a secret." My sister knocked and came in with coffee and aspirin. "How are you feeling?" "Like I just survived a car crash," I admitted, taking both gratefully. "You know the video is everywhere, right?" My head snapped up. "What?" She grimaced. "Someone recorded it on their phone. It's all over social media. Woman exposes cheating fiancé at party is trending." My stomach dropped. I'd wanted to expose Daniel, but I hadn't considered it going viral. "How bad is it?" "Honestly, you come off really well. Strong, articulate, no screaming or throwing things. The comments are overwhelmingly supportive." She showed me her phone, and I scrolled through hundreds of comments. "Queen behavior," one said. "This is how you handle a cheater. With evidence," another praised. "Anyone know if she's single now?" Asking for a friend made me laugh despite everything. But there were also comments about Daniel. People had identified him, found his LinkedIn, his company. Someone had even found Jessica. Their professional reputations were being shredded in real time. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," I said quietly. "You didn't do this," my sister reminded me. "He did. You just refused to suffer in silence." Over the next week, the fallout continued to ripple outward. Daniel moved out of our apartment. We'd been living together for 2 years, taking his things while I stayed at my sister's. He left a note apologizing, saying he understood if I hated him, that he hoped someday I could forgive him. I threw it away without finishing it. The calls with lawyers began. Untangling our shared finances was complicated. We'd combined accounts for wedding expenses, put a deposit down on a venue, ordered flowers and catering. My lawyer assured me we could recover most of my contribution, especially given the circumstances. Daniel's parents called, his mother crying, saying she'd always thought of me as a daughter. I was kind to her, because none of this was her fault, but I made it clear there would be no reconciliation. Whatever Daniel had told them, the truth was now public record. My own parents were devastated, not just by Daniel's betrayal but by their own blindness to it. "We loved him like a son," my father said, looking older than I'd ever seen him. "How did we not see?" "Because he was good at lying," I answered simply. "To all of us." Work was awkward for the first few days. People had seen the video, everyone knew, but my boss called me into her office and said something I hadn't expected: "You handled an impossible situation with grace and strength." Anyone who judges you for it can answer to me. Slowly, life began to rebuild itself. I moved into a new apartment, smaller but all mine. I threw out everything that reminded me of Daniel: photos, gifts, the wedding magazines I'd been collecting. It felt like exorcising a ghost. Ryan reached out 2 weeks after the party. "I owe you a real apology," he said when we met for coffee. "I should have told you from the beginning. I knew what he was doing was wrong, but I was more loyal to him than to what was right. That makes me complicit." "Yes, it does," I agreed. "But you helped me in the end. That counts for something." For what it's worth, Jessica broke things off with him. And he got demoted at work. The company didn't want the drama. I think he's moving back to his hometown. I should have felt triumphant hearing that, but I just felt tired. I don't want revenge anymore, Ryan. I just want to move forward. 3 months later, I was having dinner with friends when one of them mentioned she'd seen Daniel at a grocery store. "He looked terrible," she reported. "Asked how you were doing." "What did you tell him?" I asked. "That you're thriving. Because you are." And she was right. I had started taking art classes, something I'd always wanted to do but never made time for. I'd reconnected with old friends I'd neglected during my relationship. I'd even started dating again, nothing serious, just coffee and conversation, remembering what it felt like to be chosen, to be someone's first choice rather than their backup plan. The engagement ring, I'd sold it. The money went into a savings account I labeled New Beginnings. I didn't know yet what those new beginnings would look like, but for the first time in months, I was excited to find out. One evening, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I opened it. "I know I don't deserve your time or attention, but I need you to know that losing you was the biggest mistake of my life. You were never my backup plan. You were the real thing, and I destroyed it. I'm sorry. I'll spend the rest of my life being sorry." It was from Daniel. I stared at the message for a long time, feeling nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no lingering love. Just a mild sadness for what could have been if he'd been a different person. I didn't respond. Instead, I deleted the message and blocked the number. That night, I stood on my apartment balcony, looking out at the city lights. The wound Daniel had left was still healing, still tender, but it was healing. I'd learned something important through all of this. I didn't need someone to choose me over others. I needed to choose myself. My phone buzzed again, my sister, asking if I wanted to come over for dinner tomorrow. Then a friend, sharing a funny meme. Then my mom, saying she loved me and was proud of who I was becoming. I smiled, typing responses, surrounded by the real relationships in my life. The ones that didn't require backup plans or secret messages or elaborate lies. I was nobody's backup fiancé. I was the main character in my own story. And I was just getting started.